Dr. Sandra Smith serves as a management team member at Via Hope, a Texas-based nonprofit organization. Her team recruits and trains individuals, develops curricula, and studies peer support best practices. The accomplishments she is most proud of are the creation of the Texas Reentry Peer Specialist Certification and its approval as a national peer certification and training by Mental Health America. We need to thank her and recognize her for bringing the very people to the table who need to have a voice, the peers. Doctor?
Thank you. Sarah, do you know if there's the clicker? Oh.
That's like an evening at my living room looking for the clicker.
I'm there. I'm like, wait, that doesn't look like a clicker. A new age clicker. There we go. All right. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of my session. And we will collectively pray for my voice if you believe in prayer, because COVID, the monster, refuses to leave me alone. My name is Dr. Sandra Smith, and I am the Peer Programs Manager of Via Hope. Via Hope is the mental health resource of Texas. Via Hope actually began in the last time that the country stated that there was a mental health crisis, not too different from it is now. The first, I'll say, mental health crisis, and there was a transformation demand from the state of Texas and from the United States, rather. And the state of Texas actually applied for those funds and were awarded those funds. And Mental Health Resource of Texas grew out of the funds for the Mental Health Transformation Act of 2009 or 2013. And it was implemented in 2009. Sorry. What does Via Hope mean? It basically means that we're traveling from one place to another. And I'm here today because I am what they consider evidence. I don't know that that is what I consider myself, but I am a person that has been formerly incarcerated. I am a person that came away from that experience with a passion for helping those that did not have what I had, which was a great deal of support. And as we, travel that journey of coming back, you've heard a lot about reentry. You've heard a lot about peer specialists doing this. You'll hear a lot moving forward, because I think that we're finally at a place in this country where people realize that peer support is just that, right? It's peer support, but why not utilize that? It's one of our most powerful tools, is to have folk that have been there and done that come back and help those others navigate. Very basic concept. So why aren't we utilizing it more? And I'm one of those people that ask a lot of questions and have been fortunate, like I said, enough to be able to be on the forefront of something that we hope is doing a lot of help. And we want to be able to share that with you so that we can partner with you, so that you can ask questions and really understand what the evidence-based nature of peer support looks like. We at Via Hope, like I said, we began in 2009, technically, so we've been at this a little over 12 years, and we do mental health peer specialist certification training. We are the organization that created the mental health certification for the state of Texas. So when we received that transformation grant funds, we didn't know what that meant. What does it mean to transform mental health in the state of Texas? So technically, we went to Georgia, who at that time were the leaders of peer support, and we basically hired their consultants to help the state of Texas implement mental health peer specialists. And from that, we have people in the room like Anna Gray, we just heard from, who came to Via Hope, and we sat down and we looked at what Georgia had and said, how can we develop this specifically for Texas? What does Texas need? What are the needs of Texans when it relates to having peer specialists? Also, just wanted to note that there were already substance use peer specialists in Texas. So in Texas, right now, we have 3 certification trainings, and we'll go over that in just a little bit. Via Hope offers that mental health peer specialist certification that we developed for the state. We also provide the peer supervisor certification training. Talk about that in a little bit. We are the only organization that does the reentry peer specialist, and we also have something called the SAMHSA, How Being Trauma Informed Improves Criminal Justice Systems. That's something that I would ask that invite you to call us and see if that's something that we can provide. There is no charge for this training. It is a SAMHSA training, a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration training, and it's really just having those conversations about what is trauma. So for us, and for me specifically, when we start to think about what it looks like to start people to put a dent in the recidivism numbers in this country, we don't talk about trauma because it's not sexy, it's not cute. We don't want to delve into that. It's too heavy. But how many in this room have not experienced some type of traumatic occurrence in your lifetime? Pretty interesting, right? So why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about how we can get people to begin the healing process when it comes to trauma? Because it's heavy. Trauma is extremely heavy. But what we've learned by research and what we've learned by experience is that we can actually get people to begin the healing process by including them in environments where they're able to have basic conversations about not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And when I'm able to do that, then I'm able to lift some of that weight off of me, and I can begin to start the healing process. Those are just other offerings that Via Hope brings. But peer specialist, again, you've heard about it, you hear about it all the time. It is an evidence-based practice. What does that mean? That means that there's evidence that it works. It means that, as simple as the concept is, peer support's not new. It's been happening since forever and ever, but the formalized, ethical-based, required oversight of peer support is now becoming something that people really understand and embrace to be impactful in what we consider to be some non-traditional settings. Again, peer specialist, just to summarize this for you, because there's a lot of information, it's I've been there, I've done that, so let me help you navigate based on what you need, not what I need, not what my experience was, but what is it you want? Maybe you don't want to be in recovery. Maybe you don't want my help. And guess what? I can't make you do that, but at least coming to the understanding that that is what you want, is to be left alone. Guess what? You're actually helping that person get to a place of thinking about that. If we're able to plant the seeds of, wait a minute, what is it I really want to do with myself? What is it I want to do with my life? And so a lot of research, and now we're here. We're here where peer specialists are really getting out into areas that what we consider to be non-traditional areas. The traditional areas are local mental health authorities and recovery community organizations. Those are places where peer specialists have traditionally worked and obviously have thrived and have been able to help many people. The one thing that we want people to understand is what peer specialists does not do. Peer specialists are not clinical in nature. What we can do is help enhance the clinical aspect of someone's recovery, of someone's journey, but we really need for people that are doing reentry, any kind of peer support, to stay in their lane, which is, I am a person, that is in recovery. I am a person that has been where you have been, maybe not necessarily that specific experience, but there was a time in my life when dot, dot, dot. And it's amazing how impactful that can be for a person that has been incarcerated or is currently incarcerated, because I'm sure that you know that reentry begins the day that you're incarcerated, which means that in reach and reentry starts when you enter the carceral system, not necessarily when you exit the carceral system. We want to be able to dispel the myths about what it means to have a mental health challenge. We're really big on language. We don't say illness. We don't say XYZ has schizophrenia. We say this is a person who is experiencing symptoms of schizophrenia. We have to remain person-centered. If we keep that person at the forefront of everything that we say and everything that we do, then we won't forget that we're dealing with a person and not a disease and not a symptom. And so often, these myths and all of the things that we hear about mental health is really it's rooted and grounded in shame, because we have as a society has made it this horrible thing. And once COVID hit, we all were like, hey, I feel like I need to talk to somebody here. I've been locked up in this house way too long. And it's not that you're crazy, it's that you need some help. It's that you need to talk to somebody. And when I ask you how many of you had not experienced trauma, I did not see one hand. So that means to me that there is some truth to this idea that being able to help people start the process of recovering from trauma through trainings, through peer support, is something that we would love to have more people experience. This is just a really small, short little continuum that we use it in most of our trainings, and we like to use it because it really just kind of highlights when we're talking about peer specialists and we're talking about where we fall in this continuum of helping people. It's really, again, it's not all the way over here in the clinical aspect, and it's not all the way over here in the friendship aspect. It's right here in this, I need to help you because I'm going to come to where you are. We have to meet people where we are, where they are, or they're going to get lost, and we're not going to be able to reach them. And this is available. I think I'm going through it pretty fast, but I want to make sure that we leave some time for questions, but also more than happy to send, email this PowerPoint or any information to you. So the Texas Certification Board currently has the following certifications. So there's the Mental Health Peer Specialist certification. That is a Medicaid billable certification. There's a Peer Support Supervisor credential. That is also a Medicaid billable credential. There is a Recovery Support Specialist. That is specific to those that have had substance use challenges. That credential is also Medicaid reimbursable. There is something called a PRSS, which is a Peer Recovery Support Specialist. That is not Medicaid billable. That is credentialed through IC and RC, which is the International Certification and Reciprocity Consortium. There are currently a Family Partner certification. Family partners are parents of children who have experienced mental health challenges. And then there is the Reentry Peer Specialist certification that began as a brainchild from somebody that will remain nameless, that may or may not be standing before you right now. That credential is approved through the Texas Certification Board, but it is not Medicaid reimbursable. One of the reasons, and we are often asked the question, why or do you not want to be Medicaid reimbursable? It's not a want, it is a barrier, because if we're going to say on one hand, we want to be able to train people that have, we already know they're felonies, we already know they have felonies. They are taking the training because that's the criteria for the training. It kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to say that you have to have a background check and we're going to eliminate you because you have a background if the requirement is that you have a background. So when it comes to Medicaid reimbursement, background checks are one of the requirements. And so this credential does not have that requirement. Now, where they work, obviously, we have zero influence on how an organization, what requirements they have, what background checks are required from those organizations. But I do think that in some cases, and we do again have some evidence, that having these individuals in places with this particular population has been really helpful. The first Reentry Peer Specialist certification happened in July of 2019. This was that group of people. I always like to put a face with folk. These people were really excited and they were very proud to be able to say that we have something specific for us, that finally somebody believes that there is that thing called redemption. When we did our research to create this curriculum, what we found at the time was that there were 4 other states that had reentry peer specialists, and they were basically called forensic peer specialists. We brought a work group together of a cross-section of this population, and by cross-section, I mean people that had been to jail, people that had been both to jail and prison, some that had been to state jail only, some that had only been in jail and not been to prison, LGBTQ, African American, Hispanics. We wanted everybody's input based on what their impact, what the impact of this system had been on them, again, as a human being. What this work group decided, and many of these people were part of the work group, was that forensic has a scientific connotation, and who we represent are people that are reentering this society. So why would we not call it reentry peer specialist? Why are we calling it something that has a scientific connotation that really doesn't feel applicable to me as a person? Again, just some basic definitions. Reentry obviously is a transition from incarceration to the community. Peer is an individual that has a shared and similar lived experience, and then a specialist is an individual that is highly skilled in a specific field. Again, it sounds a little interesting to say that I have specialties or I have expertise in reentry because I have been incarcerated. But guess what? I have. It makes me an expert because I've been there and I've done that. My Ph.D. makes me an expert in research and human services because I did do that and I did earn that degree. So I get to be on both sides of both fields, and I get to be able to say, guess what? If we can remember that we have created this system, that society created this system, and then we have also created a parallel system that throws people away because they have had mental health and substance use challenges. I think there's something wrong with that. We did this, and then we want to know what happened. And then we want to know, well, what's the solution? The solution is stop doing it. The solution is give people supports. The solution is give people diversion opportunities. The solution is put some of the money that we're putting into research into the communities to help the people that need it because they no longer have trust in a system that we've created full of bureaucracy. Sorry, politicians. The purpose, again, of this was really just to say that there are people that recognize and understand that there are individuals that have been through the system that need support and that deserve a quality of life. All of this is about quality of life. All of this is about, wouldn't you rather have a person come home from incarceration when we already know 80% of the folk that are incarcerated at some point are coming back? Those folk are going to be your neighbors. Would you not want those folk to be trained, have a job, have a quality of life, or would you rather have those people contemplating how to break into your house when you go to work? It's pretty simple. It's not rocket science material, and we get to help develop our workforce. So we created this training. The curriculum, again, it was researched. It's a very, very stressful. I'm going to say stressful. I was going to say itchy. We had one participant say, "This is really itchy. I'm really uncomfortable," because we push people out of their comfort level. Because if I was a person that was abused at 5 years old by my stepfather, and I never uttered that, and I am now 40 years old, imagine the massive amount of weight. I said earlier that trauma is very heavy. Imagine the massive amount of weight that is being lifted off of that person that is now in an environment with other people that have had similar experiences and is able to articulate the level of pain, excuse me, and struggle that they have gone through in their entire life and never have uttered a word to any individual. Imagine how freeing. We have literally had folk say, this person physically looks changed after having gotten that out and began the healing process. So beginning, before, during, and after trauma is something that we go through. We use something in the training that's called A Hero's Journey. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's basically taking people, again, through what it looks like to have had this experience of incarceration, face their trauma, and then come out as what we define as a hero of your own life, because you're taking over your life, you're taking control, you're deciding what you want, you're setting your goals, you're doing your recovery plan, and you have someone along that process with you to help you through that process. We talked about some statistics on this. Earlier we were talking about the sequential intercept map or model. Our training has the honor of being a reference in the PRA, which is the Policy Research Associates of SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, not too many acronyms here. We are listed in Intercept 4, which is Reentry, with this Reentry curriculum because they reviewed it and thought that it had the potential to be able to help individuals. So we're really proud of having ourselves listed there. Again, if you're not familiar with I can't imagine that anybody in this room is not familiar with the sequential intercept model, but if you're not, I would encourage you to look it up and go to our website. There's this version, the PRA version, is on our website. And the most important thing that I say to people when I talk about the SIMS model is that it begins and it ends with the community. It's the most important part. And when we start looking at all of those intercepts, 0 through 5, we really start to gut at and think and get to dig into, what does it mean when I first encounter police? What does it mean when I first encounter possibly a mental health advocate for the first time in this process? We were recently partnered with the Texas Criminal Justice Department of my goodness, Texas Department of Criminal Justice. We recently partnered with them on a governor's initiative that's called Above and Beyond, where we were able to go inside of 2 units and pilot our trainings. And that grant was extended for a year because of the results of just those 2 trainings where they were females. 3 of the females were released, came back to Via Hope, finished their training, took the exam to finish their training. TDCJ paid for their credential, and they are now in the process of hopefully looking for jobs, and we will be able to help them secure jobs as reentry peer specialists for the state of Texas to be able to help people and help us combat this again. That's the first group of 10 young ladies. Also, this training, I think the judge mentioned, has been approved by Mental Health of America as a peer certification based on the curriculum and the results. I did it, and the results that we have. I also wanted to just mention that Via Hope was able to obtain a HRSA, Health Services and Resources Administration grant through federal HHS back in September of 2021. And this grant was a workforce development. It's called the BWET, Behavioral Health Workforce Education and Training Grant. And the basis of that, again, was to train individuals. We pay for the training, we provide the training, we pay for the 250 hours that's required by the state of Texas to have your initial certification training. And then we place them in what we consider non-traditional settings. Some of those settings are Travis County Mental Health Public Defender's Office. Some of those settings are the Travis County Jail Complex. We now have a peer specialist that is located inside of a Travis County complex, and call Danny Smith. He can tell you the results. It's been absolutely amazing. We're really trying to figure out how to get more folk in there. Obviously, there's a background check situation, but the point is if we can get people cleared to be in the facility, to have conversations. He has a wait list of 150 folk on that psych ward wanting to talk to him, waiting to just have a conversation because he's an individual with lived experience. So what we're gonna recommend to the Travis County Commissioners Court, anybody here, is that we take that pilot and we build upon things that are already working. We don't need to reinvent the wheel if there's stuff that we know is already working. All right, we got 1 minute and 51 seconds for questions.